I want to thank you so much for being here today for this new session of the Spaceavocat Symposium. As you know, we started last year for the very first edition. It was right after the pandemic, and it was quite trendy to have digital webinars. Today, we are doing another session of this virtual webinar dedicated to a very hot topic in the space industry, which is access to space. Because now we see a lot of investment, a lot of project planification from government, from private entities to foster the development of space projects. But it was, I think, relevant today to ask the questions to all the stakeholders. Actually, what are we doing into space? What is the key solutions in order to access this outer space? First off, before starting everything, I again want to thank you so much for being here today, and also all the panelists. As you know, this event is very simple on the organization. I want it to be very authentic and people being able to really talk about what they are doing. And that's why we have two roundtables. The first one that will kick off in 10 minutes is focused on the industry players, and I want to thank them again for participating into it. I know that the schedule right now in the space industry is very hectic. We had IAC 1 month ago, and now we have a lot of events. So thank you again so much for them for attending this event today. And the second part of the event is, of course, dedicated to the institutions. We are lucky to have a representative of the CNES, the French Space Agency, today, and also the ITU, which it's also very critical and very important especially for new space venture when they want to reach and to get spectrum frequencies. Finally, and I know Deborah is somewhere in this event, also Deborah from Proximum, and thank again for Deborah for arranging all the organization of such an event. We have the famous B2B meetings that you're able to book in the catalog section. Actually, you go to this catalog section of the platform, and you just pick the company you want to talk to, and you can be able to arrange a meeting with the person. That will happen after the conferences, which is about like 4:30-ish p.m. CEST. A few preliminary words before diving into the first roundtable of the day. I'm going to share a quick presentation. Give me 1 second. Right. So as you see, there is the program of this afternoon. As I said, the B2B session will start around 4:30. So we have 2 solid hours of discussion about the famous term access to space, because that looks to be quite easy. Access to space is a technological issue. You need to have the technology to go there, but you also need to have authorization. There is a lot of legal and economic parameters that you need to complete in order to be able to access outer space. That's what we're going to discuss today. Just, I'm a lawyer, so I like to have a discussion about the main principle. The idea is not to, of course, bore you with the legal parameters, but the idea is really for you to understand what is the context from a legal standpoint. As you know, you have a core pack of founding treaties that are dealing with the access to outer space. The main one is, of course, the Outer Space Treaty from 1967, which actually lays down the main principle of space law. Because even if you are whatever type of space actor you can be a new space company, you can be a legacy space company, you can be an institution, a governmental body, whatever, you have to comply with space law principles. And the very first one is that accessing outer space, exploring and using outer space, as per Article 1 that you can see on the screen right now, is a liberty for states. I mean, this is all the states that are signing, of course, this treaty have the liberty to go in outer space and to use freely the outer space. That means that this liberty, this freedom, is only for states. So if you have as a startup, as a company, as a venture, as a governmental body, you want to access outer space, you are under the umbrella of the state. And that's why you have the Article 6 of the same treaty that is actually dealing with a responsibility. Because when you have a freedom to do something, you also have a responsibility that you need to carry on in order to sustain this liberty that you have. That's this liberty, these parameters that states has to comply with is actually that they have to authorize you. That's why accessing into space is a freedom for all the states. It can be also as a repercussion be a freedom for you as a space actor, but in order to be able to go there, you need to comply with administrative steps imposed by your own state in order to be able to get outer space in the outer space. So that's why I wanted to really kick off this event today by going back to the origin of this idea of access to space. Yes, of course, you can access outer space as a private entity or as a governmental entity, but in order to do so, you need to have authorization from government. And this is a cornerstone of the entire regulatory framework. Whatever government you can be, it's the cornerstone of international space law. Very rapidly, just wanted to say again the big principle of space law. Of course, that we're talking about non-appropriation. I don't know if this afternoon we're going to talk about space resources, but that is now a hot topic. As I mentioned, freedom of exploration and use, Article 1 of the OST, that's the cornerstone of the international space law. And of course, just below, the case below it, as you can see on the diagram, the authorization regime for non-governmental entities. So when you are a new space company, you can benefit from the freedom of exploration that is for the state like a derivative. But in order to have this right, you need to comply with the authorization regime. Of course, there is liability for space activity. There is registration principle. All these are steps that as a space company, a space administration, you need to comply with in order to be able to access to space. Just a few remarks also regarding the space activities, regarding the space law that apply to space activities. As I was mentioning before, outer space is no longer a monopoly. Before, and then you can see on the treaties, it used to be only for government because basically there was only states that were able to go in outer space and to access to space. Now the situation is very, very different. You have a lot of private companies accessing outer space. So that's why we need to comply with all treaties, and we have new realities to do that. So that's a little bit of a challenge, and that's why we see this rising, what I call contractualization of space activities, meaning that, of course, we have important treaties, but now we have also contracts. The contract that you are passing with a launch company, for instance, is basically part of the space law because that's the legal instrument that really allows you to access to space, of course, in complement with the necessary authorization, but without any contract, you can't go there. So that's why it's very important to have this brick, as now we are in a very privatized space industry. We have also other challenges that are, a bit of a hurdle for access to space. Of course, the debris crisis, which are a threat for access to space, and the mega constellation. They are not a threat, but they are taking a lot of energy and a lot of spaces in the orbits. So that's some parameter that we need to take into account. Now the situation is that you have a very strong actor in this. So what's going to be the situation with competing one? That's something we will see in the future. This little diagram that you can see is also it's a very classic vision of space law. Of course, you have the United Nations treaties like the Outer Space Treaty, that's 1967 I was referring to earlier in the presentation. This is the cornerstone, the first layer, the most important layer of legal principle. And below that, you have, of course, the regional treaties and agreement, like for instance, ESA agreement. And you go below, you have the national space law. They used to be very, very rare in the last decades, but now you have a lot of space nations arising. You have, of course, legacy one like the US, France, Japan, and you have also newcomers like Luxembourg, the Emirates, etc. So now this countries are more and more adopting space regulation in order, as I was mentioning, to comply with the Outer Space Treaty, meaning having an authorization regime for their non-governmental entity in order for them to access to space. You also have national regulation that are actually putting more details into what they are requesting a non-governmental entity to go to outer space. And then you have soft law, and I added very recently this new layer, contracts, because it's as the access to space is more and more privatized. Like for instance, if you quote SpaceX, it's a private company, and their contracts are a key element in order for you as a venture, for instance, to go to outer space. So that's why I'm adding them to this hierarchy of norms. Contracts are now the law on the lowest degree, but they are within this hierarchy of norms. Just a few parameters that you need to comply with when you are a space venture. Of course, you need to have your launch authorization. You need to deal with the spectrum resources. We will see that in the second roundtable. You need to secure your orbital positions, but also more, traditionally regarding to ventures, but you need to protect your innovation. You need to manage the data. You need to secure your exports, because when you're having an international, for instance, cooperation for a project, you need to deal with several regulation regarding export. So that's another parameter that you have to comply with. And now, more recently, you need to also have a sustainable approach, because, of course, some space activities may have some impact, and that you need to be able to mitigate them, or at least schedule how it's going to work. I'm especially thinking about the space debris. So that's, in a nutshell, in a few minutes, that's this introductory words that I wanted to have with you guys. That being said, I don't want to be late for the first roundtable, so I will stop here, and please join me in a few minutes in the second part of the agenda of today for the industry roundtable. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to add your question of the chat, and you can also message me directly if there is any problem. Enjoy the symposium, and thank you again for being here. Enjoy. Okay, is everything working with the platform? I think we are live now. We're just going to wait one or 2 minutes in order for people to get in the room. For those who are already connected, there is a chat and a question section, so feel free to ask any question you want in these categories, and I will, of course, forward it to the panelists as soon as they are flying into the in this room. Before starting into it, I just, guys, want to thank you so much for being here today. That's really a pleasure. The Spaceavocat Symposium started last year as more like a challenge and a gamble, and we made it. And I'm very happy that this year again we were able to do it, despite a lot of competition from a lot of different events. I know that it's a very, very busy month for you guys, AAC, and all the major international exhibition are now live. So it's a challenge to be here, but thank you guys again for being here today. Before starting your presentation, maybe I would like to give the floor for introducing yourself. Maybe I can start with Adeline, if you want to say a few words to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Numa. So, hi everybody. Adeline Pitrois. I work for Latitude as a head of sales. I started 2 weeks ago, so it's very new. So it's the first one as Latitude, and before that I started to work in space domain 15 years ago, and first worked for Ion Group and then for Safran.
Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
and you're starting really with a big event. That's very good. That's very good for you.
It's a good test. Thank you for that.
Exactly. Good practice. That's always good to try. Valentin.
Hi everyone, thank you very much Numa for the invitation. So I'm Valentin, I'm the CEO of RightSpace, and long story short, we digitalize access to space and launch management. And I mainly have a background in tech companies, so I'm not a pure player of space, but now after 2 years in space business, I guess I can bring some tech good practice to space.
And I'm very happy that you're here today, because I mean we're going to see a very different side of the industry. You are more like on the new entry and the new space really approach of this ecosystem, especially the accessing to space, which is the topic of this year. So we have Latitude, which is a launcher, and then you have you with the platform, and of course another launching company, Skyroot. Kunal, if you want to introduce yourself, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi. I'm Kunal from Skyroot Aerospace, and we're a leading space launch company based out of India. There seems to be a lot of feedback that I'm getting. Dr. Numa, I believe you're on mute. I can't hear.
Sorry, excuse me. Maybe, do you have a headphone by any chance?
Yeah, I'll just sort of see.
Okay, so before... So Cécile, maybe you want to jump on, since Kunal is looking for a headphone.
Okay, no problem.
Hello, Cécile. Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. And like my colleagues on this roundtable, I want to this roundtable. That's a great idea. I'm just like Adeline because I joined ExoTrail 2 weeks and a half ago, so it's pretty new. I'm acting as a general counsel. Don't be afraid. But don't be scared, but I'm going to talk a little bit about legal issues and contractual issues.
Well, we're actually looking forward to it. And just for precision, Cécile used to be a colleague, used to be an attorney, and but she's still an attorney. I know that. So we are very happy to have you. So you're gonna have some notion from the industry, but also from the legal world. So that's gonna be very nice. Waiting for Kunal to connecting again. Maybe.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. Loud and clear. Super.
All right.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Kunal. I head strategy for Skyroot Aerospace, and we're a leading space launch company out of India. We're building small satellite launch vehicles, and it's called the Vikram platform. So that's just a little bit about us.
Thank you so much again for participating here, Kunal, and also. I guess she's connected as an audience, but I want also to thank Tanushree, who put a lot of effort to have you guys attend it. I'm very happy that you have a major player from India here today. Now we can start. As we were discussing, it's going to be a very chill discussion. But in order to start the exchange, maybe Valentin, you want to have a few words about what you're doing and about the situation for you regarding the access to space.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Numa. So I will briefly introduce the RightSpace and basically what we observed from the market out of the moment. And I will finish with few use cases that we led together, Numa. So long story short, RISE is a pure player of access to space. Our vision is to provide the most convenient, affordable, and safe access to space without having any launch vehicle on our own. To that extent, we provide two major assets to a small satellite operator. The first asset is a digital platform that enables launch on demand through a direct connection to more than 45 launch vehicles and OTVs, orbital transfer vehicles, so that the satellite operators and manufacturers can set up a launch request, analyze, compare, and benchmark launch manifest, spare capacity, price per kilogram, and level of service, and then start the bidding process and the contractual discussion with the launch vehicle. So on this aspect, our approach is highly influenced by a big tech corporation like Booking.com, Airbnb, or Uber. And the second asset we provide to small sat operator is an off-the-shelf portfolio of launch services combined with a worldwide network of partners, so that each and every launch vehicle can go very deep into some field of expertise regarding the launch value management chain, whatever it's about multi-launch planning, radio frequency location, specific orbits, integration, licensing, and transport or insurance. So digital platform business is what we call a winner-takes-all ecosystem. So at the moment, we are competing against US, German, and Middle East competitors that are trying also to digitalize the access to space. And our ambition is to become the worldwide standard of access to space by 3 years. So out of this very, let's say, brilliant and active ecosystem, I would like to highlight a few trends of the markets. The first one is I mean, I won't go further into the huge growth we saw regarding the number of new launch vehicles incoming into the market. At the moment, we have listed like more than 207 launch vehicles in our database. But the most interesting part about that is as soon as we are going to enter a real competitive environment, that is going to bring more standardization of process, of level of service, and we are going to see more and more off-the-shelf solution and approach, where 10 years ago it was a very, very customized and dedicated approach. So SpaceX started to do that, and we now see other launch vehicles that are very off-the-shelf services that you can take or not, and that are the same for everyone. I would like to do also a little, let's say, point to highlight about the growth of actors in the launch and access to space ecosystem. 5 to 10 years ago, that was really the the golden rush for a micro launch vehicle. And now what's interesting to see is that now we see more and more small sat and small lift launch vehicles that are getting bigger, even if they have not even launched anything. But that's the case for RFA, that improve its capacity. That's the same for Terran 1, from Terran 1 to Terran Air to from relativity space, and same for Neutral from Rocket Lab. And what we see like currently is that it's now more a golden rush for the OTV. So there is not a single month in which we don't see a new OTV coming up out of the market. That brings me to the second point of the market trend that we identified at the moment, is that the access to space is going to become more and more modular. So it's like Lego somehow way. There is a high modularity in the scenario that a small sat operator can build according to a small launch vehicle or a big launch vehicle plus an orbital transfer vehicle. So there is now plenty of opportunity, and they can play with different scenarios according to the planning of constellation they plan, according to the different orbits they need to reach. And that is going to be even improved with big project of space hub and in-orbit station, like we see in Orbit Fab, for example. So I guess there is a bright future for space law and space regulation for in-orbit activities. The third market trend that is quite interesting also to highlight is that we see more and more transparency and digital at the end in the access to space in the launch market. It used to be a very confidential and opaque business, but as I said before, SpaceX and Rocket Lab has been the first to have an online, transparent way to book and to access the price and their capacity and their manifest a few years ago, and then it has been followed by Arianespace and by more and more launch vehicles like ISAR at the moment. So it's highly comparable to plane or train business industries, where yield marketing and open booking platform now play a major role. So the mission of RIDE and the topic of this symposium is mainly about facilitation of access to space. So I will also describe a little bit what RIDE can help in that objective and in that goal. The first thing that is interesting to note is that a lot of small sat operators struggle for sure to access data and information, and it's quite hard for them to make a wise and clear choice of which are the best launch solution for the need. So currently, most of them go straight to SpaceX, and they don't even try to compare and to request other proposal. So what we do on the launch digital platform of RIDE is to allow them to access an agnostic range of information regarding launch planning, manifest, price, level of service. And we do also the same for deployers and separation system. The second aspect on which we focus the more on facilitation of access to space is all about the compliance on launch technical aspect and planning. So we provide a digital tool that compare the mechanical environments from more than 20 launch vehicles, so that the small sat operator are now able to define the best envelope of their satellites that will ensure them to be compliant with the environment of as much as possible launch vehicles. And then we set up for them a reverse planning with the right milestone and deliverables of each big step of the launch campaign, so that they can be sure to be on time and in the right condition on the launch pad. The third one that is maybe not the most exciting topics, sorry about that, Numa, but it's all about regulation, licensing, and all these aspects that are critical in the access to space. We have seen too many satellites to be stuck on ground and consequently miss their flight because of some licensing issue. So for that, we have built a worldwide network with the ITU, UNOSA, ITAR support, and other export licenses partner help each and every actors to be well guided and sometimes unlock situations that were locked forever. So every time we have the same approach regarding these topics, we acquire knowledge and we spot the main pain points I tried. Then we digitalize the process and we provide as many as we can company a wide and direct transparent access to this information. So I would like to share a quick video, maybe Numa.
Of course, I think you have the share button.
Yeah, I think it should be all right, but
okay.
You never know. All right, you should see the screen right now.
Perfect.
Do you see me? Okay, perfect. All right, so it's just a quick video of how the platform is built. So basically, for satellite operators, they can easily connect to their safe environments and then be able to online benchmark the manifest and upcoming launch that are listed out of the market, and then start a matching process where they will fill their own launch request according to number of satellites, orbital parameters, inclination, LTAN, etc., whether they have propulsion or not, whether they are ITAR-free or not, and then the access to the cockpit, in which they can online compare the offer from a launch vehicle. So what you see here is an anonymized video, because we had, of course, to hide the launch vehicle information. And on the other side, for launch vehicle, we provide in the mirror, I would say, the ability to digitalize their selling channel, their launch vehicle ID and performance, level of service, price per kilogram, per form factor, etc., so that they can easily then define their manifest and proceed to the right matching with the launch request. So that at the end, they have incoming launch requests that are matching with their manifest and performance in their home page. And then they can start the bidding process and acquiring a few clients without needed to hire more and more selling people. So it's very complementary of the selling team of the launch vehicle, as well as the mission management team that will take over the relationship on the platform. All right, so if I go back to the screen sharing, I think, did I stop sharing now?
Perfect. You're
awesome. So to end that quick speech, few feedbacks of the market of what to observe for the two past years, is that despite the huge wave of new launch vehicles that is expecting, we clearly observe some delays in terms of market access from this launch vehicle. Almost all of the launch vehicles we were discussing with and that were in development, they have all of them delayed at least from 1 year, then maiden flight between 2020 and 2022. So we are still lacking of launch solution out of the market, and there is a bottleneck, mainly represented by SpaceX, almost a monopoly. And the second aspect that is interesting to note is that, in my opinion, legal and regulation is a little bit behind the rush of the market and struggle to adapt to the highly flexibility of the private actors. So as an example, and something that we face, I tried, is that we are providing a new approach that is mainly inspired from tech companies as a digital platform solution. But at the beginning, when we went to launch vehicle, we mainly faced some responsibility discussion, because they wanted us to take the whole responsibility of the launch, the integration, and all the part of that was linked to the real space business. While as a platform, we are more in an approach of being a facilitation and empower each actors where their own responsibility. So together with Numa, and thanks again with that, we went to some launch vehicle and make some education about what was platform business and what could be a mandate contract regarding the responsibility of the platform in the middle of the relationship. And I guess it was quite fruitful because now it's well more understandable by the non-vehicle. So as a conclusion, I would say that all the actors here on the table are highly actively participating into the democratization of access to space, of the emergence of new use and habits, and RIDE will do its best to enhance them and enable their market access, whatever they are, launch vehicle, OTV, or small sets. So yeah, feel free to ask any question after the talk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Valentin. It was a very great presentation. Of course, all the participants in the room, you can ask questions on the chat and the question section. You can also contact Deborah if you need any assistance with the platform. Thank you again for the presentation. I think it was very relevant for you to intervene and maybe to kick off this roundtable, because you really have the sort of disruptive mission within this segment of accessing to space. You talk about standardization, which is a hot topic in the industry, and talk also about transparency. Of course, the space industry used to have quite opaque processes, and now the new space, all the actors of the new space are willing to have something faster, something more transparent. So talking about this, I would like to ask now Adeline from Latitude, which is on the other side of the segment, building the hardware. So Adeline, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Numa, and also thank you, Valentin, for not replacing right now the salespeople on launch vehicle side. It means that I have still some years of activity. Thank you. So if I can, Numa, I will use some slides.
Please do. No
it's
problem.
It's easier for me to start because I don't know the speech by heart right now.
Absolutely.
So I will use PowerPoint a little bit. Okay, so let me share. Okay, my screen and up. Tell me if it's okay.
Perfect. Working.
So you can see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yep.
Good. Okay. And okay. So so thanks again, Numa, for the invitation and also for the opportunity for Latitude to participate to this roundtable. As I mentioned briefly before, I joined Latitude 2 weeks ago. But I'm not new in the space domain because I fell into it at the very beginning of my career 15 years ago. And since then, I'm following the tremendous changes of the market, so of the sector and of the market, because what we observe is that we observe more changes in the last 10 years than in the previous 50 years. And these changes exactly explain exactly the roots of Latitude. So for years, and this has been mentioned by Valentin, for years, satellite manufacturers had to adapt themselves and their business model to a very limited launch vehicle offer. I mean, this led to a paradox because it was easier and faster to launch a building site satellite than a shoebox satellite. The offer was mainly provided by heavy launch vehicle, and for sure, and we can understand it, priority was given to biggest satellite because it's easier to put two big satellites in a fairing going to the same orbit, mainly GTO, than plenty of satellites to different orbits. When the launch market started to be more competitive and more open, so we can for sure discuss the chicken and egg story with SpaceX arriving first and also more demand regarding end user. It brought small satellite new opportunities and helped them to build also new business model with a constellation. For example, I can give the example of OneWeb, which was one of the first big constellation. So Latitude is currently developing a micro launcher to address these new actors and offer them a nimble and affordable solution. So in line with what has been introduced on the previous slide, this emergence of the small satellite market also created a large panel of new application, new actors. Small satellites can serve so many domains as Earth observation, IoT communication, also defense and security, science and environment. And this is just a macroscopic view of the multiple capabilities it can offer to end users. And the growing demand is for sure has a positive impact on launch markets and services, because the demand, the bigger and the larger the demand is, the bigger and larger the offer should be. So what we offer at Latitude is that we would like to address this demand with an accurate, responsive, and affordable solution, which has been designed to be able to reach a very high launch rate, approximately 50 launch per year. Provide also the market with a responsive solution. I mean 6 months between the agreement and the launch, which with an objective to reach even shorter delays for some specific cases. To give you an example, right now it's an average of 2, maybe more than 2 years between the launch agreement and the real launch. At Latitude also we want to address orbit flexibility to address, so it's mainly low orbit but different inclination and different orbits, and provide customers with one of the cheapest dedicated launch solution. There is cheaper solution for rideshare solution, for example, but Zephyr, our launch vehicle, will be one of the cheapest dedicated launch solution of the market. And last but not least, and we already spoke about this topic during this panel, we want also to offer a sovereign solution without any dependency from any non-European supplier, because it's very important. We know the difficulties to deal with, for example, ITAR solution. So we are currently designing a launcher without all these difficulties in terms of export control, regulation, and so on. So this is our baby, which is called Zephyr. So Zephyr is approximately 18-meter length, and the performance Zephyr will allow to launch approximately 100 kilograms in low Earth orbits. It's for sure, it's a liquid propulsion launch vehicle. We want also to address, to have a versatile launcher with different capacity to launch from to different orbit, and for sure with 2 different spaceports, one in the north of Europe in Spaceavocat, and we also signed a preliminary agreement with CNES to launch from French Guiana to address equatorial launches. Very briefly, the team. So we are almost 70 people in 2022, and should be 150 people in 2023, with the aim to have a first launch of Zephyr in 2025. And to conclude, I can offer you like a short projection of 2025 with a 1-minute video of a Zephyr launch from Spaceavocat. Okay, so if you have any question, do not hesitate to ask, and thank you very much for your attention. As you can see at the very end of the video, there is also the deorbitation of the launch vehicle with the last boost for deorbitation of the launch vehicle stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we can really appreciate the compliance with the regulations.
Yeah.
It's very good to see that, and we're looking forward to 2025 indeed, when we see such a beautiful now virtual but soon real launch.
Hopefully.
And that's very interesting, because now we're going to jump to a competitor of you on the other side of the world. Kunal, the floor is yours for Skyroot.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm also going to what I'm going to do is, at the outset, I'm going to quickly walk you through what we're doing. And then I'll sort of delve a little deeper in terms of, what at least I think would improve access to space moving forward. Can you see my screen? There we go. Just let me know if you can see the screen.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Great. So we're Skyroot Aerospace. We're India's leading private space launch company. So we're building small satellite launch vehicles with a mission to make access to space affordable, on demand, and reliable for our customers, essentially satellite operators. Just a little bit more about us. The space sector in India opened up in June of 2020, so just about 2 years ago. And we are the first space tech, private space tech startup to sign an MOU with the Indian Space Research Organization to essentially access their facilities and expertise. We're a well-funded company. We've raised $68 million of capital so far. And currently we're a team of about 200 people with a very rich, with rich experience in the rocket industry. So we're building the Vikram launch platform. The platform is named after the father of India's space program, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. And on your screen, you essentially see 3 launch vehicles. We consider this as a single launch platform. The architecture is very customer-centric. It is designed in a manner that is affordable for our customers. We can assemble and launch within just 24 to 72 hours, allowing our customers greater schedule over launch, greater control over their launch schedule. And the upgradation from Vikram 1, 2 to 3 is extremely modular, very easy, fairly easy to do, allowing us to sort of cater to a wide variety of customers' payload requirements. Now, these are essentially fairly smaller launch vehicles. They require minimal launch infrastructure and can be launched from anywhere around the world. We also have a facility to deliver payloads or satellites into last mile orbits. So essentially, space is, as you would know, not a single destination. Our customers want to go into very precise locations, and that is something that we help them with as well. So we have a payload carrying capability ranging from 480 kilograms to 800 kilograms to low equatorial orbits. Now, the entire architecture is designed with a mix of solid, earth-storable liquid, and fully cryogenic propulsion technologies. So, I'm happy to sort of say within just 3 years of the company's inception, we've validated all propulsion technologies, and all of these technologies were tested in the first attempt itself. So we've got earth-storable liquid here. We've got a fully cutting-edge system. We've got a solid propulsion system, which will essentially take us from Earth to space. And again, we were able to do so in the first attempt. And this is primarily on account of a very, I would say, very strong engineering and technology team that we have in terms of who has rich experience in terms of execution. So Pawan and Bharat essentially are founders of Skyroot, and we have a very strong engineering team comprising of former rocket scientists and veterans of the Indian space program. And essentially, in this particular industry, the science is fairly well known, right? So it's a lot of the success comes from the execution capabilities. So I'm happy to say that we have a fairly strong team in that regard. So coming to, what, at least in my opinion, would enhance access to space. Now, as of 2020, the space economy in general which comprises of upstream and downstream sectors, was valued at about over $370 billion. And of that, 70% was essentially downstream sectors, which comprises of which comprises of several or numerous industries which rely on upstream space infrastructure providers. Now, for the downstream sector to essentially deploy space-based applications at scale, we feel that the upstream infrastructure providers, such as us, the launch service providers, satellite operators, satellite manufacturers, separation systems providers, additional service providers, we have to sort of figure out a way to deploy, to offer turnkey solutions to the downstream sector so that they can readily, take the solutions and deploy them at scale. So that is one sort of an opportunity which will tremendously enhance access to space, in our opinion. And this can be done through doing everything ourselves, or B, through partnerships. So we see a lot of opportunity in terms of forming new partnerships, which allow for greater risk sharing, which allow for greater cost sharing and drive specialization. And these partnerships would, in our opinion, would drive greater value to downstream customers, and again, catalyze the deployment of space-based solutions at scale, and thereby strengthening the upstream side of the sector. The second bit is essentially access to capital. Now, especially on the upstream side. Now, in our experience, what we've seen is, especially for new space companies who are building some form of infrastructure, in their early stages, they're going to get funded by angels or high net income individuals, majorly. As we grow, we need greater institutional investments or institutional capitals. And this is where, in our experience, we feel a lot of venture capitalists, private equity players, even debt capital providers require a lot of sensitization in terms of what the business models are. So, greater the sensitization, greater their understanding of the returns over their investments, and lower, I would say, the cost of capital or their risk perception as well. So this is one area. The third bit is creating demand anchors. Now, these essentially, in our opinion, during the initial stages, especially for the upstream infrastructure builders, anchor demand customers or anchor customers would essentially be public sectors or government budgets or government programs. And till the time, the downstream sector is in a position, or the upstream sector starts providing turnkey solutions, and the downstream is in a segment is in a position to sort of start deploying solutions at scale. Now, as far as these demand anchors are concerned, especially as far as government budgets are concerned, there's a tremendous opportunity. There's tremendous synergy in space-based solutions, or tremendous alignment of space-based solutions with sustainable development goals. And there is a tremendous opportunity, we feel, in aligning SDGs with space-based solutions, thereby allowing the public sector, or thereby allowing, I would say, greater consensus across the public and private sectors to deploy resources and capital. The fourth bit is communication. So, an interesting report that I was reading was an IMASAT report. I think it came out last year. And one of the key takeaways from that report is that globally, people have fairly limited or non-space sector players, or people in, outside, especially the upstream side, have fairly limited understanding of how space-based solutions can impact their lives, and what kind of solutions people are building, and what kind of opportunities or how lives may be improved on it through space-based solutions. So there is a very limited understanding here, and so space is not a billionaire's club, right? It's not just about Mars and the moon alone. We need to, especially on the upstream segment, I think it's a collective moral obligation for us to sort of communicate better, to make people understand the solutions that we're building in a very easy to get manner, and how our solutions may impact or may improve lives on Earth. So that, and this, the way we communicate could also help build consensus in public and private sectors to sort of for greater resource allocation, is what I feel. And the last bit is talent building. So we've got great talent all over the world, but there's always scope for improvement. And, talent that is sort of readily deployable towards this the sector can enhance go-to-market times for a lot of players. And this could be done through dedicated programs. Of course, there are a lot of programs world over, teaching space-related subjects. It could also happen through greater university and industry collaborations. So that the skill sets are up to date and they can be readily deployed to build solutions. So these are just like a couple of pointers that I had on how we could improve access to space over the coming years. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this great presentation. I really liked the different type of parameters that you really pointed out, and it's interesting to notice that you share some similarities with Latitude indeed. And I think you can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You were talking about reactivity vis-a-vis your clients. Both Latitude and Skyroot were also talking about this access to funding, the access also to awareness. People need to be aware of what they can actually do with your solutions. And also Latitude, you mentioned the idea of independence. Building your own rocket also give you some independence regarding the technology. So that's something crucial. Last but not least, Cécile, you are representing like Valentin, a new type of job in outer space, which is the in-orbit servicing. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Numa. Like Adeline, I will do exactly the same. I will need a video to support
no problem.
my presentation.
No problem.
So I'll try to... okay, do you see my screen? You see it?
Not the presentation. It's
not
just the screen, but now
this one, yeah.
Just the screen. Okay. Okay. So I just say share, and then
normally you can just. There is another type of option.
No,
it's like Zoom.
No, it just says my screen or.
Okay.
I can't.
So if you share your screen, maybe.
If I share my screen and if I say that, do you see anything?
Yes, now we can see the ExoTrail presentation.
Okay, great. Okay,
you're in.
Yes?
Yeah, but it's not in presentation mode. Oh, now it's in presentation mode.
Okay, so there. Okay. Okay, so thank you, Numa, for to discuss a little bit with the other panelists on the hot topic, as you said, about space access. And as I said in my quick introduction, before to speak a little bit about legal and regulatory and contractual challenges for access to space, and more particularly for new space players, I will a few slides who ExoTrail is. So it is a French-based company that is developing end-to-end mobility and have in this respect 3 missions. The first one is to improve deployment by developing an in-orbit deployment system, to increase performances by using both optimization of design and operating satellite, but also by designing and manufacturing. I will talk a little bit later about it. And our third mission is to reduce space pollution in the next. Sure. To achieve these missions, we have developed 4 products, which are the first one, the Spaceware. Here it is. This is a high-thrust electric propulsion engine system, which has and various fit to our client needs. We have also developed I said we, but I am a lawyer, so I developed nothing, obviously. The engineers, they have developed two softwares. The first one is the Space Studio, which is a software to design the mission in advance before a satellite based on the client and the mission requirements and to optimize the design of the satellite. The second software is the Space Tower here, and the Space Tower is operation optimization, which includes operation of mega constellation, where you would need not one operator behind it, but you can use this software to monitor all the constellation. And there is the fourth product that is under manufacturing right now, which is the Space Drop, which is in fact the development and the launch of an in-orbit transfer, which is propelled by the software, which has been designed and which will be controlled with the space. So our goal is to become a mobility and space logistic leader, and our agenda is divided in 3 steps. The first one is to become a mobility solution leader with the manufacturing and of software, what we've done, as we have some engines already in space. The second step is to develop in-house the Space Drop, so the in-orbit transfer vehicle. And the third step of our agenda is to become an in-orbit service. As I said, ExoTrail is a French company. We have currently 2 sites in France. One is in Massy, this is south of France, where there is the headquarters and also the propulsion system department. And the other site is based in Toulouse for the mission software department. And we are a bit more than 70 employees as of today. So this is our team, which looks quite... Okay, so now let's talk about important thing. Important challenges, I guess. And as Valentin said earlier, there are some challenges with the regulatory and legal framework. Indeed, as Valentin said, you may have some project or some satellite stuck on the ground because they couldn't get the proper license. So what it's important for a space player that wants to access space, it's to understand the regulation. Well, first to identify which regulation will be applicable, then to understand it, and most importantly, to comply with this regulation in order to get the proper license or authorization, whatever the name it is given in the related regulation. But we have that for new activities, such as for instance, on-orbit services, the current national regulation might not regulate these activities, and there are some gray zones that remains, and we will definitely need to discuss these gray zones with the relevant authority. Another topic I wanted just to point out very, very quickly, it's the issue as far as there are quite a lot of national regulations that follow the subscription of a third-party liability insurance in order to get the proper license. But once again, for new activities and for new space players, there might be some difficulties to find proper and adequate insurance. The insurance market may not be really ready to offer a cover, and beyond that, there might be a question of cost. What would cost an insurance compared to the overall global cost of the project. So this might be as well an issue, and might maybe be discussed with once again relevant authorities. Few quick words on the contractual challenges. I was very happy, Numa, when I saw your PowerPoint earlier, where you've put the contract on, almost on the same line than the regulation and guidelines and so on. But it is true. The contract is a keystone for a space project today, at least for private entities also. But obviously, it brings its lot of challenges as well. A few of them would be, what is the liability between the parties? Can we, or even shall we mitigate the risk between the parties? For instance, by using appropriate contractual mitigation provisions in the contract of recourse, hold harmless clauses, and my view is that to support the development of these all these new activities, using contract mitigation provision would permit to support this development. Another challenge that we can find out is the question of the performance of the mission. How can we assess the performance of the mission? What are the tools that we can use to make such an assessment? And what are the provisions that we can add in? So these are really briefly some key views on my side. So what are the next steps? What are the need for when we talk about space access? I just was thinking that having a regulation or a guidelines with respect to space traffic management, to monitor the use of the outer space, and having regulation or guidelines with respect to on-orbit services. A good path to go along. But this type of regulation should be definitely adapted to new space, to new activities, and to new actors. Then, as we cannot compare a satellite operator or launch provider that that is performing their mission for decades now, so we cannot compare them with new space players. So we need to have some adaptation that would be applicable to the new space. And this would bring what? Well, confidence and certainty on the player, so that they have some confidence to have the support of also a relevant authority to carry on their activities. So this is in a few words what I wanted to briefly to tell you about legal, regulatory, contractual issues with respect to space access. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cécile, and thank you also for this great legal inputs. And I appreciate that you agree with me regarding the contract importance now and the new space legal ecosystem. You know, we have just a few minutes to conclude this first roundtable, and of course, if you guys have questions, feel free to type them in the question section. One of the biggest questions that is always coming again in the industry, as attorney, and I think Cécile, you agree with me, we are always here to mitigate the risk, or at least define what is the risk and how to legally mitigate it. But I wanted to ask you guys more from a business point of view and a strategy point of view. How do you see this vision of this notion of risk, which is of course inherent to the space industry, and which is even more important when you are building a launcher or when you are providing a disruptive services such as ExoTrail or RIDE? So Adeline, for instance, how at Latitude do you cope with this notion of risk, given also the venture you are actually pursuing?
So you mean, Numa, the mention of risk during a launch phase, for example?
Exactly.
So this is something really, it's not the hardest point, but it's really a difficult point to address, because we need to be really reliable. And even if we know that in new space we will be able to manage risk differently than it has been done in the past, because for sure, if you take a launch vehicle like Ariane, you know that it's very, very reliable, and customer also are buying Ariane 5 or 6 tomorrow, for example, for its reliability. So it's also a question in new space, because maybe you want to give more place to failure, but at the end, your customer also doesn't want to have one satellite on every 5 satellites in the sea. So it's a big challenge, because we on a way we need to integrate some products, as have been mentioned by Valentin. We need to integrate some cuts and to be ready to take some risk. But on the other way, our customer wants to be for sure 100% reliable. So it's really a big challenge, and we need to work a lot on it, and we need to find the good balance between, because reliability has a price, for sure. It has a price, it has cost. So we need to find the good balance between 100% reliability and customer who are confident in your launch vehicle and are sure that if they choose you to place their satellite in orbit, they can rely on you.
Yes, there is this type of balance that you need to find, and you also find it in a contract. A new space contract is very different from, especially from the risk side, compared to a legacy one, for instance. Kunal, as you are in a strategy also department, how do you see the situation regarding the risk?
So I would second Adeline's viewpoints, and in addition, I mean, as a emerging launch service provider, we're building our vehicles, and the entire risk can be divided into, let's say, the technical risk of the vehicle itself and the operational risk. So from a technical risk standpoint, are various ways that we can reduce in terms of how we approach the architecture, or how our architecture is designed, what kind of subsystems we're using, whether there's heritage on the subsystem, flight heritage on the subsystems, etc. So there are a variety of ways of reducing that technical risk. But as far as, let's say, an operational or mission risk is concerned, so that perhaps has to be dealt on a case-by-case basis. And that risk, in my opinion at least, can be reduced substantially if you've got a strong team with who has had execution experience in the past in this particular domain. So that risk gets reduced by that on that account. But having said that, as Adeline sort of mentioned, the customer is risk averse, whereas the vehicle segment could initially, during the initial stages, be fairly risky to the customer. So one way definitely could be that, maybe some forms of new contractual arrangements or business models are required on the insurance side that could, help sort of mitigate a part of that risk. But having said that, what we've seen in the market, or what we continue to see, at least as for now, is, the initial launches will be high-risk launches. And once precedent is established on the vehicle, thereafter, we can have greater uptake. So typically, from what my knowledge is, all the small launchers or all the launchers in the world, they've not typically carried customer payloads in the first launch. So you have to plan accordingly. You have to plan your capital outlay, or your capital requirements rather, accordingly. And so these are ways that you can mitigate risk, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, we have 2 minutes left, so one for each. Valentin and Cécile, if you have the last words on the risk. Valentin, you can go.
Well, on our side, it's a little bit different from the launch vehicle and what have been said just before, because we are not the owner and we are not the proprietary of the spacecraft. So as a third party and a trusted third party, the risk of the platform is mainly to be not as wise and as transparent as it should be. So our job is mainly to provide the right information to the right actors and certificate the seriousness of the actors on the platform. So from what I see on the risk aspect and on the risk of choice that can be made by the satellite operator on the platform, it's more about being well informed about track record of the launch vehicle, about success rates, about level of service, about regulation that are linked to each of the launch vehicle, and then to, at the end, mitigate that final risk that is mostly bared by the launch vehicle.
Okay, and Cécile, you can each other in the institutional roundtable. Cécile, please.
Okay, thank you. So it's going to be very easy to finish with this question because Adeline and Kenal have said almost everything about risk management. Okay, so thank you very much. We definitely have the same way of undertaking the risk on the technical side. To provide a reliable product, all of us. So we have engineers working on this, making this very. And on the contractor side, we have quite a lot of means to mitigate the risk. That is the result of discussion with our clients as well. Not talking about insurance, that can be on the cake. So
thank you so much. Thank you guys for your input. It was very, very nice to have you. Time flies. We already have to jump to the institutional roundtable. So guys, if you have time, come with us. It's on the program section. You just click and we're going to have a discussion with the CNES and the ITU. Again, thank you so much. Have a great day and see you in the other round.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, just waiting for people to come in. First thing off, I want to thank you guys so much to be here today. I know that your agenda is very busy, so once again, thank you for making it for the symposium. As I was mentioning earlier, that's the second edition of this event, and the goal is really to have a discussion about a strong topic for the industry, which is of course access to space. And you are representing two pillars very essential from an institutional standpoint regarding the access to space. Once again, regarding this platform, Deborah is there. She's on the chat section, and you can discuss with her if you have any technical issue regarding the platform. Also, feel free to book your meetings if you want to participate to the B2B meeting session that will be after this webinar. We just had a couple of minutes ago the first roundtable with industry player. We had Launched, we had on-orbit servicing, and we also had brokers. So a very big diversity of new agents within the space industry. But for this institutional roundtable, we have two major actors here. First, we have Alexandre Vallet. Alexandre Vallet is from the International Telecommunication Union. And please, Alexandre, if you want to introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Alexandre Vallet. I'm the chief of the Space Services Department in the International Telecommunication Union. So basically, my department is registering all satellite frequencies for all satellite projects all over the world. And we do that by maintaining the database of all frequencies used by satellite. I will maybe present it more in details a little bit later in the roundtable.
Absolutely. And thank you again for being here. Frequency and spectrum is really crucial for the mission. And it's very interesting to notice that, especially new space actors are sometimes panicked about this parameter. So that's good that you're here. and of course, Alain from the CNES, the French Space Agency. Alain, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Numa. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Alain Boissaison, and I'm the General Counsel for CNES, the French Space Agency. I started in the legal function in CNES a few years ago now, 20 years now, as a contract manager, then the head of department in charge of contracts matter and intellectual property right. And for 5 years now, I have the pleasure of leading the entire legal function for CNES.
All right. Thank you again so much. I think we're going to start by the CNES. And of course, then after that, Alexandre, you will be able to deliver your keynote. And after that, we're going to have a Q&A session. Once again, to all participants, if you have any question, feel free to drop them on the chat section or on the question section. Alain, the floor is yours. If you want to show a presentation, let me know, or otherwise, you can start now.
Only a speech.
Perfect.
Okay. So thank you, Numa, again for organizing this symposium and for your invitation. So I will present the CNES vision on access to space as a French space agency. So my presentation will therefore focus on the sector of launchers and space transport system. But as an introduction, it should be remembered that for us, space is a central sector for big challenges of the next decade. Today, space is irrigating both swathes of the economy and numerous public policy for France, which can be broken down in 4 main areas. First, space for us is a cornerstone of France's strategic independence. Second, space is promoting the excellence of French scientific community worldwide. Third, space sector is delivering data crucial to gain new insight into the Earth system and adapt to climate change. And lastly, space is supporting the broader space ecosystem and playing a key role maintaining our competitive edge. So CNES, due to its historical missions, which are confirmed in the objective and performance contract signed with the government for 22-25 period, has to deploy the space policy to serve the social challenges facing us in the decade ahead. To strengthen our strategic independence, it is necessary to maintain an independent and competitive access to space, and that is our main point. Access to space is a capacity of sovereignty. It is the indispensable foundation of any ambitious space policy. The primary mission of a space agency as CNES is therefore to guarantee autonomous access to space over time. European access to space is based on a family of launchers, Ariane and Vega, and on the launch range, the Vienna Space Center, CLG, whose geographical, technical, and operational characteristics make a prime asset for Europe. And this autonomy to access our space pass through 3 major ways. First, and in short term, by the entry into exploitation of the European launchers Ariane 6 and Vega C, developed in ESA frame. The entry into exploitation has already been done for Vega C, following the qualification flight this summer in July. And of course, after the entry into exploitation, they rise to ensure European institutional mission, particularly those impacted by the Soyuz shutdown in CLG. And to remain present on the commercial market with a direct reinforcement factor of the launcher sector and indirect reinforcement factor of the orbital system sector, because the guarantee of a launch is a strong commercial argument. Secondly, the preparation, of course, of future European launcher, and finally, the affirmation of the CLG, Vienna Space Center, as Europe's spaceport. All of these topics are formalized in a complex legal frameworks composed of intergovernmental agreements, international agreements, and resolution adopted in the ESA framework by the agency member states. And then they are declined by the European agency, in agreement or contract with the industrial sector. It is a matter of continuing our effort to have a capacity to access to sustainable and independent space without element of extra-European dependence, and this objective should guide our decision at ESA Council meeting at ministerial level taking place in 1 month in Paris. Alongside this strategic issue of sovereignty, it's up to CNES in its mission to sustain the space ecosystem, including newcomers, of course, and new operators. And this support is reflected in the CNES Research and Development Program, in all technology sectors, satellites, launchers, services, as well in the implementation, the future implementation of the France 2030 plan, for which the CNES is for the space sector a delegated operator with BPI France. BPI France en français. I don't know the name in English. Okay. One of the specific subject on the specific subject for launcher, as an example, the French Space Agency, the CNES, published a call for application for the implementation of micro launchers operator in the at the CSG. And our colleague Adeline for Latitude had a few words about it. So this procedure is ongoing, and it's not possible to go into details here because there is a lot of confidentiality on it. But the objective is to allow, within the limit of the capacity of the CSG, of course, but also in the capacity of the satellite market, to provide a business plan for these new operators. So to allow a use of CSG by private micro launcher. Yeah, of course, this action, like all the support action, must be part of the strict legal framework. For example, public procurement regulation or European Union rules related to state aid. So regulation larger than the specific space regulation defined in French Space Act, and I have to say, sometimes more complex than space law. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Alain, for this very good summary, because some keywords popped in during your intervention, such as independence, sovereignty, strategy, and you really feel the specific role of the CNES to pilot, of course, the French strategy in space, but also this global impact that French industry has on the space scene. You were mentioning the notion also sustainability, which is a direct link to scarce resources. And talking about scarce resources, the transition is done to Alexandre, which is dealing also with scarce resources and very strategic one, because that's the frequency and the spectrum management, which is absolutely indispensable in order to carry on space missions. So Alexandre, you have the floor. I think you're muted, Alexandre. Okay.
Do you hear me now? Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nima. So I will start with a brief description of what...
Oh, I think there is a problem again. Sorry, what happened? Oh, yeah, you're in. Okay.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah,
sorry.
Thank you. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I will start with a brief description of what is the ITU. So the International Telecommunication is a UN specialized agency. But in fact, we were born quite before the UN, since we were founded in Paris in 1865, and we were at the time the International Telegraph Union. In 1932, in Madrid, we became the International Telecommunication Union. And in 1947, just after World War II, we joined the UN system, but as a specialized agency, which means that we have our own budget and our own internal legal system. This is quite important to understand because we have a quite specific legal system compared to other UN agencies. First, we are comprised of several types of members. So, of course, we are a UN agency, so we have 193 member states, which are the main members of the Union. But we have also other type of membership. And this is important because the other members that I will describe a bit later are members. They are not observers to our work. So they have defined rights that is in our legal system. And so basically the two other kind category of members that we have are the private sector in the industry, the satellite, the operators, and the academic institutions. So the universities, all kind of academic institutions. So these members have certain rights which are much more elaborated or much more much larger than observers in many other international organizations. So our members, even if they are not member states, have the right to make proposals. They have the right to submit documents. They have the right to chair meetings, and they have the right to intervene on their behalf. This is quite important for our organization because we, as an organization, we try to deliver or to decide by consensus. This is quite common in the UN system to decide by consensus, but this makes a big difference, of course, if you don't vote. Then not having the right to vote, which the private sector does not have in ITU, is not so crucial, because if you try to essentially decide by consensus, then you can have a good opportunity to make your voice heard by the quality of your intervention. It's not necessarily by the power of who you're present. So this has led the ITU to manage a system to deal with the international regulation of radio spectrum and associated satellite orbit. We do that through very legal binding texts, since we do that through treaties. We have, I would say, in ITU, two levels of treaty texts. The Constitution and the Convention of the ITU, they are the fundamental, what we call the basic legal text of the ITU. They define how the ITU is working and what is its mandate. And then we have what we call administrative regulations, which are also treaties. And one of these administrative regulations is the radio regulations, which is an international treaty governing the international use of radio spectrum and associated orbits. So this is not a new treaty. The first version of this treaty was in 1906. At the time, it was created to regulate and to harmonize worldwide the frequencies used for distress call of ships at sea. It evolves over the year, and what is interesting is that in 1963, just 6 years after the launch of Sputnik, there was a conference amending this treaty to include frequencies for space systems. So in the time frame, the first treaty that contained provision for space was the radio regulation. So it predates even the adoption of the Outer Space Treaty. This was done by member states at a conference. And this is what is important to understand about our treaties, is that our treaties are not stable, not at all. The radio regulations, they are revised every 4 years. So there are treaties that every 4 years are modified. Of course, in order to balance between the need to adapt to technological evolution and also the need of certain legal certainty for the actors, we don't change the treaty in its entirety every 4 years. What we do is that we have this cycle of World Radio Communication conferences, which are treaty-making conferences at the level of states. And these, a WRC, a World Radio Communication Conference, at the end of a conference, establish an agenda for the following conference 4 years later. And what will be done is that the treaty will be revised 4 years later, only based on this agenda. So we have a selected number of issues that we will deal with during 4 years of preparatory studies. And during the next conference, only these items that are on the agenda will be subject to modification of the treaty. So it helps to have a balance between the need to adapt to new technological evolution, but also the need to provide certain certainty so that, for example, if your decision has been made at the previous conference, it will not be reopened or completely changed at the next conference. So all in all, it has worked quite well since 1906. We have now more than 2,000 pages of regulations. And as you may imagine, because there is no sovereignty, no national sovereignty in outer space, quite a good number of these pages are devoted to radio spectrum management in outer space. So this is quite an important part of the treaty. I would say as important, for example, as the maritime frequencies. And this is quite interesting to note that there is a lot of commonalities between space law, at least in in frequency management, and maritime law. This is mainly due to the fact that maritime law is one of the very few law where you deal also with international territories or international areas with no national sovereignties. And so there are many commonalities. What do we do in terms of managing the radio spectrum in outer space? Three things. First, we allocate spectrum. So we take the radio spectrum, which is a finite resource, from 0 kilohertz to 3000 gigahertz. And this finite resource, we cut it in small parts that we call frequency bands. And in these small parts, we decide collectively during this World Radio Conference about what harmonized usage we will put in these small frequency bands. For example, you have the frequency bands dedicated to mobile networks and for your mobile phone to work. You have frequency bands dedicated to terrestrial digital television. You have also frequency bands dedicated to the global navigation satellite systems. But you have also a number of frequency bands dedicated to fixed satellite service or mobile satellite, scientific satellites, and so on. So in these frequency bands, it is important to understand that then all satellite systems falling into the category of mobile, Earth observation, space research, they will share these frequencies. So there is no it is important to understand that there is not a single frequency allocated to each mission. Each mission does not have a frequency on its own. That would be, I would say, a single frequency for this mission. All missions share the same spectrum. So the second work of ITU, second duty, is to manage the access to this allocated spectrum. And we do that basically with a quite simple process. At least the principle is simple. Then there are tons or myriad of nice subtleties that makes our work quite esoteric for the newcomer, but also quite important in terms of managing the spectrum access. So the principle is simple. It is that if you have a project as a company, you go to your national regulator because only states can apply our treaty. This is quite logical. Treaties are between states. They are parties of it. Therefore, only the states themselves implement the treaties. Then, so you go to your national regulator, and your national regulator will send to the ITU a description of your project. This description in the Radio Communication Bureau where I work, we receive it, we process it, and we check whether this description is in conformity with the provisions of the treaty, the radio regulations. If yes, then we publish this description internationally, and we ensure that all the member states of ITU, the 193 member states, receive this information. When they have received this information, they check whether this new project could interfere with either one of their satellites already launched or in operation, or with some of the projects that they have already communicated to ITU. If yes, then they will simply send a letter to your national regulator saying, take care, the description of your project may interfere with one of my satellite or one of my projects. So we need to discuss more in details the whereabouts of your projects to ensure that there is no interference between these two satellites. This opens a series of bilateral discussions, generally conducted at the level of satellite operators within the framework established by the member states, but generally the technical discussions are between satellite operators. And then when a solution has been found, a solution that is to be technical, in the sense that our rules are designed to ensure technical compatibility. We are not in the business of competition promotion or competition regulations. We have no economic role or no economic regulation activities. So our role is really only technical, and therefore the discussions are based on technical criteria and lead to technical solutions. When it is done, it means the satellites are compatible. Then your national regulator will register the frequencies in our database that we maintain, and then you become an incumbent. New satellite projects that want to use frequencies, they will have to make sure that they don't interfere with you. And this is this process that is applied by everybody, every satellite project in the world, and we build our database like that. So all in all, this system has been in use since the end of the 60s, and it has managed up to now the growth of the space activities. The last thing that we do in ITU is in case there are problems with the implementation of these technical solutions. For example, you have agreed a technical solution, but you realize that in operation it does not really work as you planned on paper. So there are actual radio interference in operations. Then we have a mechanism to detect and solve these radio interference with a different level of escalation depending on the difficulties of resolving. So this is the three main activities that we are performing and which aims at guaranteeing access to radio frequencies in outer space. So maybe I will stop here and see if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Alexandre, for guiding us within this very complicated process. But it's also very understandable, as you mentioned, that there is a consensus rule. So it needs to be regulated very precisely to avoid any interference, because otherwise there is an interference and jamming. It's not possible to have a safe space mission. So your role is really critical on this. There's two words that I would like to further explore in this discussion. One is sustainability, but the other one is also new space, because now, of course, we see a lot of new actors coming. We were discussing earlier in this roundtable the sometimes difficulty that new space actors may have with frequencies. But on a general scale, and maybe that's a question to start with you, Alain. What is the vision of the CNES regarding the new space? Do you have any specific procedure to accommodate new space specific needs? How do you help them, especially dealing with the French regulatory framework?
Maybe to answer to this question, if you agree, I will switch in French.
Of course, no problem. Yes, sir.
Donc, la vision New Space, il y a deux points. D'abord, le rôle du CNES de soutenir un écosystème. Donc ça, c'est ouvert au New Space. Il y a des actions particulières, non pas parce que c'est le New Space, mais parce que elles permettent d'entrer dans le secteur spatial et d'avoir les premiers guichets, on va dire. Et ensuite, la régulation globale, concurrence, donc marché public, subvention, elle s'adresse à tous. Il faut faire en sorte qu'elle ne soit pas, qu'elle reste ouverte, c'est-à-dire qu'elle ne soit pas trop complexe pour en fait fermer la porte à des nouveaux entrants. Mais ça c'est un sujet majeur. Ensuite, il y a un soutien de l'innovation de manière générale. Et cette innovation, elle est effectivement apportée souvent par les nouveaux entrants. Donc, par l'innovation, le CNES doit pouvoir aider les nouveaux entrants. Et ensuite, les nouveaux entrants, ils ont souvent des nouveaux services. Et actuellement, donc, il y a en discussion une révision de la loi relative aux opérations spatiales pour justement, Exotrail en parlait tout à l'heure, essayer de prendre en compte des nouveaux services, non pas forcément pour contraindre, mais pour avoir un cadre sécurisant pour la mise en œuvre de ces services-là. Alors, il y a le service dans l'espace, typiquement, il y a les constellations, qui sont quand même une nouvelle problématique. Donc un groupe de satellites qui travaillent ensemble pourrait être autorisé en tant que tel et non plus satellite par exemple. Donc ça, c'est en cours. Il y a eu des consultations informelles entre le CNES qui est chargé de proposer ces nouveaux régimes au ministre de l'Espace et certains opérateurs, mais il va y avoir évidemment une consultation beaucoup plus large et officielle par les autorités avant le dépôt des modifications sur un véhicule parlementaire qui doit encore être défini en termes de calendrier parlementaire, j'entends. Parce que le besoin d'évolution est reconnu par tous.
All right, just to sum up in English for our English speaker friends attending the event. So what you mentioned regarding the CNES is that the CNES has a very specific role to accommodate the entrance of new space actors. So it's very critical for you guys to find a balance between a very demanding regulatory framework, but also something that can be easily understood and apprehended by new space actors. You were talking about public tenders. You're also talking about the more general legal framework applicable in France, which is the LOS, the Loi sur les opérations spatiales. It's a law that has been here for a while, and you are mentioning that now it is being modified in order to accommodate new type of functions such as in-orbit servicing or constellation, in order for not to regulate them for the sake of controlling it, but more for giving them a secure framework where they can also attract investors because their niche, their segment is actually regulated by a reference entity such as the CNES. You are mentioning that discussions are ongoing, especially between the ministry and you guys, and apparently in the next few months you may have some consultation open to the stakeholders, and of course we keep you updated for that. Alexandre, regarding the ITU, how do you see the new space actors coming up? Do you have any initiatives to help them? How do you see them entering into the market via your institution?
Yeah, well, so first, what is quite interesting in the radio spectrum management, so it's important to understand that ITU is a telecommunication organization, not a space organization. We have a strong space component because of the international aspect of space, but this is true. This is mainly led by, I would say, telecommunication companies. In general, in telecommunication, we have one key principle, which is technology neutrality. And therefore, most of our rules are designed normally to be applicable by everybody. One of the difficulty, in my view, for the new space industries with regard to our rules are the level of complexity or the level of details that we have. We are probably one of the most complex treaty for space activities, in the sense that we have a lot of details to be provided. The way we accommodate new space, it's mainly through trying to help in capacity building. We cannot really have specific rules for a specific segment of the market, because this would run against one of the principles of equal law for all. So basically, I personally feel that the new space actors will be more will find more help from their national regulators, because then national regulators may decide how to support various segments of the industry, depending on political or policy priorities. We don't have at ITU level such policy priorities, if you wish. Our priority is to make sure that the same rules applies to all. I do not hide that this is quite challenging in terms of understanding our rules for new space actors. This is also why very often there are some experts on the market, consultants or lawyers that in fact provide the support for new space companies. In general, what I say to new space companies is that if you want to do it alone, then be prepared to devote a significant part, significant time to do it. It's maybe therefore preferable to look at external consultancy to do this aspect of the work. It should, however, there is one point, however, that should be understood is that the process that you do for getting a spectrum from ITU should be seen, in my view, as part of the strategic development of a new space company. And this is not necessarily something that is very well taken into account from the beginning. We do not allocate spectrum to specific satellites. We allocate spectrum. So as long as you use the spectrum you have requested, you can continue to use it with different satellites. And therefore, this is quite important to understand that you should see the ITU process as a strategic asset for your company, including for the future development of your company. It's not as if you are going to launch one satellite having these frequencies, and then you launch the same satellite, you have to redo all the process. No. If you launch the same satellite with the same frequencies, well, then you simply continue to use the frequencies you have registered to us. If you do that, then you start to analyze the access to frequencies more in terms of having this asset within the portfolio of the assets of your company. Therefore, it makes more sense to devote some money or some time to get this asset. So in my view, it should not be seen only as I would say as a regulatory administrative task, but really as something strategic for the company in terms of it provides an asset to the company. Of course, this is not an asset like something as a property, or you don't own frequencies in space, of course, because there is no ownership of any kind. But still, you own, or you have the national license, and the member states that have made the registration for you in ITU, they have certain rights and obligations with regard to these frequencies, and they have indeed some rights: the right to transmit, the right to receive, the right not to be interfered. So this creates a kind of legal asset that you should see and you should incorporate in the strategic the plan of your company.
Yeah, I agree on that. The most of the time when they come, or the colleagues, and the idea of procedure, and it takes time, but yeah, is money also, and it has value, because I mean they proceeded to even to get authorization from the CNES. That means they did something with this regulatory authorization. So that's something that needs to be taken into account. It's not just a framework; it's also a time that the project is actually going through the procedure.
And if I may just
key that really popped out of your discussion, and which I think is, yeah, please.
Yes, no, it was just to add also that this kind of assets help with investors.
Say something?
Yes, do you hear me? Okay, I think there is some delay. Yes, I can. Do you hear me now? Emma, you seem frozen.
I'm afraid we lose Newman.
Yes, indeed. It seems, yeah. So maybe I will just explain what I was saying, that the fact of having authorization either by CNES or by ITU or by your national regulators, it will also help in the convincing investors that you have a serious project. This is generally, I would say, circular or an iterative process. You will first need to show that you have started the process of getting the license. Then you will be able to get the first round of investments. Then probably to obtain the license, you will need also to demonstrate some financial credibility. So not at the ITU level, because we are only concerned by technical aspects. But I know I was working before in the French frequency agency, and certainly to get the license for frequencies usage from the French government, you will have to demonstrate that you are a credible company in terms of being able to operate your satellite responsibly and being able to have the necessary tools to control the emissions of your satellite. And I assume this is the same for CNES. I'm not really a specialist of CNES authorization, but I think
yes, it's quite the same. There are two levels of expertise to obtain an authorization.
Sorry for that.
Okay, Numa, you will come back.
Sorry, I had an IT issue, but I think it's back.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so there is an administrative level to verify the capacity, the financial capacity of an operator. It's verified by the ministry. And CNES is in charge of technical advice on the technical capacity of the satellite or of the launcher. And then the ministry takes a decision, operation per operation, to give an authorization to the operator.
Okay. So regarding the second notion that I was mentioning was about sustainability, because now we have a lot of discussion at the moment regarding space debris, but also regarding scarce resources. We see a lot of very bold constellation project. Sometimes we have like numbers of satellite, which is absolutely crazy. And so I wanted to have your opinion on this idea of sustainability. So maybe the CNES, you would like to start with that. How do you cope with the notion of sustainability within this French and also by extension European vision for space?
I think that we can have by French law, but we are not alone in space, of course. So I think that we have to define some international guidelines, then translate in maybe national law for authorization. But I think that today the French law for space operation and the future modification are a good frame to define a kind of type of activity to maintain sustainability activity in space. But it's difficult to say now because it's only drafting, and we have to discuss with all operators, and we have to pay attention that the regulation is not only a constraint. So we have to protect our French operators.
Yes, absolutely, because on one hand, there is this emergency to avoid the creation of new space debris and to also have a more responsible use of outer space. Since we have not only one nation, there's a lot of nations coordinating also orbital positions with different type of constellation services and programs. But and you also want to avoid the forum shopping aspect. That of course, if France or the UK or the US are the only one having a very restrictive regulation, well, company can just say, well, I'm going to go to another type of country. So that's a very difficult type of balance to find. And regarding the frequencies, Alexandre, how do you see this use of the resources? How do you guys try to tackle any abuse of use of frequencies?
Yeah, so in fact, in terms of sustainable use, we have, I would say, three main aspects. The first one is to make sure that the frequency reservation does not lead to a kind of frequency warehousing. That is to say, you make the reservation, but you never use it to provide an actual service. So this is something that is quite discussed in ITU since probably more than now 15 years. And we have a series of provisions to ensure that when you make a reservation, first, this reservation has to be brought into use. It has to be supported by a real satellite at one time. But also we have regular checks that you indeed operate the frequencies as planned. So this is an important part of our work to ensure that there is no, I would say, warehousing of frequencies or speculation on frequencies. The second aspect is, I would say, the equitable access to frequencies. So as you may have understood, the process that I have described is when you have a project, you ask for frequencies and you see if it's compatible with previous frequencies. This is interesting, but as in fact you pile up projects and there is a legitimate fear or legitimate question is, since we are dealing with a finite resource, what happens when we reach the limit? And so the limit is far from being reached, but still there is a limit. We cannot put, in terms of frequency management, we cannot put as many satellites as we want in orbit. So for that, in the past, the discussion was about equitable access to GSO, because this was the most used orbit in the 80s and 90s. So we have what we call an a priori planning of certain frequency bands and certain orbital positions to reserve a small part of these resources to each ITU member states. Now the big question is, of course, equitable access to non-GSO orbits. And for that, the discussion is only starting, because to be fair as well, there are still a lot of room available in non-GSO orbits. However, some orbits in LEO becomes now quite crowded. So it's probably the good time to discuss that. And we have just concluded one of the conference of the ITU, the Plenipotentiary Conference, which is the highest organ of the ITU. And this conference has indeed adopted some resolutions asking for more studies and potential actions to prevent, I would say, a kind of monopolization of space, and therefore to ensure continuous equitable access to space. We will see what the studies are producing as ideas. Noting, however, that when we study, we aim at introducing new international law, because as I mentioned, we deal with treaties. So, of course, this will probably require quite a number of detailed studies in order to see what is the appropriate international regulation that can be done. I think the first step will be to ask for a kind of divulgation of whether your satellite is able to be maneuvered. So does it have some propulsion, or is it a satellite without any propulsion? Because I would say the sustainable imprint of these two satellites are different. A satellite without maneuverability functions, well, then it follows a natural decay, a natural orbital decay, which is predictable, which is good, which is not predictable to with an accuracy that is perfect, because there are many variations and many possible changes in the orbital parameters that can happen. But still, you can basically see its imprint. But the big problem with this is that as soon as it is launched, then you have no means to remove it from orbit unless you buy an active removal of the satellite. On the counterpart, satellites that have maneuvering possibilities or propulsion, they are able to be controlled with more accuracy, and also to be able to be deorbited with more ease. And therefore, probably there will be a need to better understand which which one are being able to be maneuvered, which one are not, and then what for those who can have propulsion, what is the accuracy of the station keeping of this satellite. The third aspect of, I would say, sustainability in outer space, this is something that is, I would say, at the crossroad between frequency management and space traffic management. And this is really, so the ITU is not dealing with space traffic management. However, to be able to implement space traffic management, you will probably need to rely on certain usage of radio frequencies. And the question is to make sure that there is no contradiction between the rules for good spectrum management and the rules for good space traffic management. One example that may be discussed further is in good radio frequency management, you stop the use of something that is not providing the radio usage of something that is not providing anymore any meaningful service. So if you have a satellite that is not providing any meaningful service anymore, normally you stop all radio emissions on these satellites, including the beacons. That may not be a very good idea from space traffic management point of view, because you may decide that it's better that this object that will continue to exist in the Earth's orbit, even if it does not provide a meaningful service, it's better that it continues to emit something because it's easier to track it. That is this kind of rules that we may need to discuss between space traffic management and radio frequency management. This is not impossible. Of course, we have plenty of mechanism to make sure that it is discussed. But this is things that, in my view, in the next years, we will have to discuss internationally also to make sure that we don't implement rules that would be contradicting each other.
Well, thank you for this very prospective view of the regulation. Speaking of which, and I see we have just a few minutes remaining, we see a lot of discussion, and during the IAC there was a lot of interest for the moon, and we receive a lot of interrogation regarding that since France signed the Artemis Accord, and there is now all this test phase with the Artemis mission and rockets. Maybe Alain. Regarding this potential, because we are talking about access to space, so at the end of the day, that access to the moon, what would be the idea of the CNES, especially now regarding the Artemis Accord, but also regarding the potential ESA programs? What would be the lunar vision of the CNES for the years to come?
In French, maybe.
Sure.
Alors, la vision du CNES, je ne sais pas si je peux parler au nom du CNES là-dessus, mais en tout cas la vision d'un juriste du CNES. Alors c'est vrai qu'il y a eu beaucoup de discussions. La France a signé les accords Artemis, enfin l'accord Artemis premier niveau, qui n'est qu'une brique dans le futur, la future éventuelle retour de l'homme sur la Lune, etc. Moi, il me semble qu'il reste quand même un sujet, au-delà des aspects techniques qui sont passionnants et sur le retour sur la Lune, mais malgré tout, il va falloir des accords ou voire des traités de très haut niveau pour mettre en œuvre cette coopération internationale. Le partage des zones, enfin, je sais que les Américains parlent de safety zone, etc., mais il va falloir un consensus et il va falloir aussi garder la capacité d'accueil des États qui ne sont pas prêts aujourd'hui. Donc, il y a des challenges techniques. Il y a quand même une organisation de ce retour sur la Lune, puisqu'il implique plusieurs pays. Je pense que c'est soit des nouveaux accords, soit des modifications de traités. Enfin, il y a des choses à faire, puisque de toute façon, il y aura des choses à faire sur la clarification de cette notion d'exploitation aussi des ressources, puisqu'on voit bien que des pays ont des visions assez différentes de l'interprétation de la non-appropriation. Est-ce que ça veut dire non-exploitation? Est-ce que donc il y a un gros travail et un gros challenge pour les agences, pour les États et spécifiquement pour les juristes. Et sans parler du challenge technique qui est également très important. Voilà. En tout cas, côté français, l'objectif, c'est que à minima l'industrie, que la France y participe et que son industrie puisse se positionner dans des services liés à ce retour sur la Lune.
All right. So just a few comments in English for our English speaking participants. So as you mentioned, and you are talking in your capacity as a lawyer for the CNES, there is of course this technical challenge to get back there, which is not an easy one. And you also mentioned that the fact that there was the Artemis Accord, which is just one brick of the entire cooperation system that is put in place. You also pointed out that the safety zone that are mentioned in the accord are something which is still a little bit blurry. We don't really know how it's going to be managed, and you're thinking that a potential more sophisticated agreement or even a treaty should be put in place in order to manage this type of safety zone, and also to keep capacity for the states that are not yet able to go back to go to the moon. And you also mentioned the very important notion of space resources, especially in the moon, since they're going to be part of the exploration process. And now, even from a legal standpoint, we're not really sure about how to define it from a legal standpoint. Are they capable of being used? Is it appropriation? That's something that is still to be defined, maybe via the treaty that you were mentioning. And also you pointed out the fact that France's agenda regarding the moon is first of all to help its industry to be a service provider leader in this agenda to go back to the moon. Alexandre, I know we are far from the ITU original mission with the telegraph, but what about the ITU role on the moon? Because I know that a lot of stakeholders are thinking about the 4G or 5G networks on the moon, and maybe some telecommunication on the moon. So how do you guys at ITU think about it?
Yep. So, well, first, it is important to understand that our mandate already include the moon and other celestial bodies. So we, for example, we have in our database the registration for all the Voyager probes that are now even outside the solar system. But so, in terms of mandate, we also already include the moon. A not very well-known provision of our treaty is date back from the 70s. We have specific provision to protect the long-term use of radio astronomy on the far side of the moon. So the side of the moon that the Earth is never seeing is a perfect place, an ideal place for radio astronomy science, because it is protected by the body of the moon from any man-made noise. And therefore, this is a kind of dream for radio astronomers to be able to one day implement a radio telescope there. Now it's not anymore a dream. Among the various projects for going back to the moon, there are projects to put radio telescopes on the far side of the moon. And we have already some provisions in our treaty to protect this use and make sure that there is no man-made noise on the far side of the moon. What is interesting now is that we see more and more frequency registration for projects on the moon, either for satellites around the moon, for satellite at the Lagrangian points, for now stations on the moon, on the lunar surface. And you mentioned, for example, the experiment led by NASA and Nokia for an LT link on the moon. So this is now in our database. And we will see more of that, of course. And my personal view is that we will see a World Radio Conference, maybe probably not the next one in 2023, but maybe the following one in 2027, starting to give more details or more legal provisions about the usage of frequencies on the moon. This is working this is ongoing work that we are doing, and I feel this will follow the usual process that we have put for the Earth. simply we will create a new framework for the moon with more details coming, I would say, step by step. It will be a gradual process. At the beginning, clearly, the frequency requirements will be mainly driven by the scientific missions of going there. But then more and more, you will have additional requirements. And at least from a legal point of view, the basic text, the framework, the mandate, and the process to create this international regulation are in place. Now, of course, we need to see the technical studies and the legal proposal from the states to do that.
Okay, well, we're going to have a lot of material for the next edition of this symposium, since access to space seems to be a always renewing topic. Now the LEO, and then the moon, and maybe Mars one day. Thank you so much for participating to this roundtable and taking time to discuss with us. And thank you again for the quality of your presentation. It was very clear despite the high level of technicalities, both on the Knesset for the ITU. I invite you to join for the closing remarks and then the opening of the B2B meeting sessions. Thank you again so much. And you can just connect.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, just a few words to conclude this second edition of the Spaceavocat Symposium. I want to thank first all of you guys to have attended this event. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found a lot of information. I'm very happy to add these two very fascinating roundtable. The first one with the industry, amazing, great players with disrupting services and disrupting material and hardware to develop, and also the second one with the Knesset and ITU, who provided a very interesting details on a very, very complicated topic. Now, this is the time for you B2B meetings. The platform will be open until 6 p.m. So we have plenty of time to contact people who are registered in the platform and to organize meetings as you want. I hope you really enjoyed this symposium. Next year, we will give you more details, but we will have another version of the Spaceavocat Symposium. We will move from a 100% online to a hybrid event, and I know Deborah, she's in the room, and she will continue to help us on this type of event. If you have any question, feel free to put it on the chat. Also, if you have any problem with the platform, you can contact Deborah or me. There is no problem. We're going to help you to sort that out. Access to space, as you've seen, is a very rich topic, and new space is really renewing this problematic. We saw a tremendous amount of innovation and technology in the first roundtable, but also innovation in the second one. It was very interesting to notice that both the CNES had a very long-term vision, but also ITU, despite the fact that it's a very old institution. So that gives always a lot of hope regarding the evolution of our sector. Again, thank you so much for participating in this event. You're the reason that we are making it. The purpose of the Spaceavocat Symposium is really to spread the word about the space industry, of course, with a twist of law. I want to thank also Cécile, who is an expert in this field and who also gave us some input in the regulatory field. Again, thank you so much, and see you next year for the next edition of the Spaceavocat Symposium. Enjoy your meetings, and of course, if you have any feedbacks, ideas, suggestions, you can contact me directly, email me, and I will be happy to discuss with you. Take care, and bye-bye.